costs very little to spam, I guess. That's
Yeah, basically how the Bitcoin network prevents people spamming the network with transactions that are basically never going to be useful. All right, so just to kind of explain again what op return is, why we even have it. So back in 2013, I always like to bring up this example. I've done this at the desk many times already. So this is the transaction back in 2013, and you'll notice that this transaction looks kind of weird. So this is what happened before we had op return. Okay. So what this transaction is someone spent 0.78 Bitcoin spent half a Bitcoin worth of fees. And the transaction he made was he took this Bitcoin and he made all these outputs. So one Satoshi, and it stores all these bytes. Okay. Now what's really fun about this transaction is if you actually add up, all 950 outputs, and you put all those bytes in order, it turns out to be a PDF file. And the PDF file is the Bitcoin white paper. Right? And so back in 2013, when someone basically created this transaction, it was kind of like a creative kind of thing. And people were like, wow, this is really, really cool. We can use the Bitcoin network to store arbitrary data, right? It seems like a really cool exercise. Like, why wouldn't I spend my Bitcoin and make a mark on the Bitcoin blockchain? However, the moment that this, this is a really fun background drama is the mining pool that actually mined this particular transaction is Eligius, which is Luke Dash Jr.'s. Luke Dash Jr. is a very anti-arbitrary data on the blockchain, but you can say that his mining pool was the first one to put this one in. Right? So technically, this is all his fault. Right? He's a great guy, but it's his fault. Okay, so you can imagine that back then, we're like, hey, we want to put all this other kind of stuff on Bitcoin. And this is the way they used to do it. This method is called, we call this bare multisig. The idea is that you're sending Bitcoin to a multi-sig public address, right? And then, but here's the thing, like this pub key, right? So this is like the first 200 bytes of the Bitcoin white paper. What is the private key to the first 200 bytes of the Bitcoin white paper? Nobody knows. No one will ever know. So you'll see that these outputs, you can never spend them because we don't know the private keys to this. This is what we call a bare multi-sig output. As in someone used like a multi-sig key that has no private key associated with it and then attach a Bitcoin information to it. Anyways, so when this happened, I think a lot of the people who are working on Bitcoin, they kind of had this question mark going like, hey, are other people going to do arbitrary data into Bitcoin? Can you imagine? This is just one PDF file. Back in 2013, what was famous in 2013? Gangnam Style, right? Can you imagine if someone decided to put the Gangnam Style music video into the Bitcoin blockchain, right? It would not just take, wait, this took up the entire block, right? So back in 2013, block 2030.009, this transaction took up basically the entire block for one PDF file. What if someone decided to put a video in here? You'd screw up the whole entire Bitcoin network. You'd have to wait for like 7 or 8 blocks just for this music video to finish uploading, right? How would you be able to use Bitcoin then, right? Isn't that kind of scary? So that's when we're like, okay, well, we can't stop people from doing something like this. We need to come up with a way to incentivize people to not ruin the Bitcoin blockchain. Don't put this kind of junk, if you're gonna put this kind of junk into Bitcoin, don't do it in this way, which is why we came up with op return. So what op return is the idea that rather than sending your data in the bare multi-sig output, you send it to this special output called op return. You can imagine it's like a black hole of Bitcoin transactions, right? And what's really cool about for Bitcoin nodes is that when we see outputs with an op return, we have the option I don't have to store this information. Because my Bitcoin node is never going to be able to spend an op return output, so why would I need to store it? So it kind of gives it a way where it's like, hey, if you're going to store arbitrary data on people's nodes, at least if you put an op return on it, those nodes will at least know how to remove it, how to get rid of it, right? So that's why we have op return. Okay, any questions?
Slightly unrelated one, but